Hello, podcast listeners. This is Ed Franklin with the Ed Franklin No Limits podcast, and this is another series in Raising Eight. This is episode 8, and I have an awesome guest today. I wanted to say one thing before I introduce her, though. I always acknowledge breast cancer awareness. Um, I know people that have been affected by this. I've been affected by it, with knowing people that have it's got, and I want to reiterate to you that men can get breast cancer too. I have a friend that had breast cancer, so just being aware. Every day should be Cancer Awareness Day, by the way, the whole year. But like the NFL and other places, I always acknowledge it. So you're going to see a lot of pink over my October podcast. You can always get a hold of me at edfranklin.nolimits@gmail.com if you have a guest or you'd like to be a guest that would be a good fit for the podcast. And it can be either in my Raising Eight series with the kids, or it can be on my regular podcast about getting over limitations. So since I started this Raising Eight, I've been having people have been contacting me saying they want to be on the podcast. And Kate, Dr. Kate Lund is going to be a great fit. You're going to love her. She's got a resume like out of this world. She's a clinical psychologist for the last 15 years, a peak performance coach, best-selling author, TEDx speaker, a mother of twins, a wife, and I don't know, I'm tired just telling you what she does. So, Kate, good morning. I really appreciate you being on, and we're just going to have some fun with this and, chat for a little bit.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Not a problem. So, one of the things that stuck out uh, that I was interested in is how you're a peak performance coach, right? So, you've worked with professional athletes, you've worked with probably business people, CEOs, whoever. And I like the fact that you pepper in some of this parenting stuff, right? So tell me about, well, you can tell me whatever you want about what you do if you want to do a little better introduction for yourself. And I want to make sure that we're focusing on families and what you do, and it focuses on families.
Perfect. Absolutely. Yeah, because that's really the core of my work at this point, helping families, helping parents to maximize their potential by building resilience within their own unique context. And how, there's no one size fits all in parenting, right?
Yeah,
So
I know that.
we're all coming from different places, different experiences, different contexts, but how do we as parents settle into our context and maximize, optimize our parenting within that context? And then how does that impact our kids in a positive way?
How are you drawn into this body of work, by the way?
Yeah, it's a story that goes way back actually. I When I was 4, I was diagnosed with this medical condition called hydrocephalus. And that's essentially when the cerebral spinal fluid doesn't circulate as it should, causing pressure to build up on the brain. So I was this, happy, normal 4-year-old who got really sick really fast.
Okay,
And it was really hard for my parents to see what was happening, and it took a long time to figure out exactly what was going on because the imaging technology wasn't so good back in the mid 70s. And so finally they figured it out. It was hydrocephalus. And the good news is hydrocephalus can be managed with something called a shunt. Essentially a little drain that's inserted into the ventricle of the brain,
okay,
circulates the fluid for us, right? And so there was a lot of time in and out of school, in and out of the hospital. I came back to school looking different, feeling different, half the head of shaved hair, that kind of thing.
sure.
And so that was, I believe, the early foundation. From there, I had to figure out how to focus on what I could do as opposed to what I couldn't do. Build my context. Who was I with this issue? But I wasn't only the issue. And my parents were really, really great. They didn't define me by the hydrocephalus. They defined me as the person I was, the kid I was, and helped me see that and live that early on. So got really interested in psychology in school, understanding people, understanding challenge, how we move through and beyond it. And the rest is really history. I studied psychology in college. I went on to get a doctorate. I've been doing the work for, 20 plus years. And so, but those early experiences were quite formative.
So did that disease, like when you were in high school, were you still dealing with this? Do you
Yeah,
deal with it now?
it's actually a condition, but
I'm sorry. Okay.
it's yeah. Yes, I really it was throughout my childhood. I still, yes, I still have a shunt, and that is something that I'll always have. In high school, it got a little bit more challenging in that the imaging technology had improved, and I wasn't feeling great my senior spring of high school. So, and I was captain of the tennis team, and I was supposed to be playing really well, and I wasn't. I was getting beaten in every match. It was kind of a unusual situation.
Yeah.
And so they gave me an MRI with gadolinium, which is the contrasting agent that came out back then, and they saw that there was a tumor blocking my aqueduct, which is where cerebral spinal fluid typically circulates. So that was a very, very hard year. They took that tumor out, most of it, and that became kind of a primary focus. And I'm very, very fortunate. It was a really, really tough year. There were some really kind of on the brink moments, but I came back from it, was able to go to college the following year. I had taken a year off between high school and college. And, that experience only strengthened my resolve to move into this work.
Nice. So I appreciate you being that open about that. But it goes to kind of 2 points. One, you found some inspiration to do some bigger things with that, and your parents dealing with it. And so I have a type 1 diabetic, and we had a stretch where it was difficult to deal with because everybody in the household had to be affected, right?
Mm-hmm.
When we travel for sports, we have to take a trailer, so we had cold insulin, we had all these things we had to do, and everybody was a watchdog too about what. This is my youngest daughter was doing this, but anyway, yeah. So as parents, we don't know what's going to happen, right? We have this ideal. We have kids, and we go, oh, they're going to be perfect, and whether they're a boy or a girl, they're going to be dressed perfectly. They're never going to get stains on their clothes, and right, we do all these things, and then all of a sudden, I remember one time we got our pictures taken at a Sears. It was like I had my three older kids. And we came outside and I looked at my daughter. I put my arm around her. I said, "You don't look very good." And she threw up right on these brand new cowboy boots I had
Oh,
in the
ouch.
parking lot. And I'm like, well, this is welcome to parenthood, right?
Yep, that's it. No, and there's no such thing as perfection in parenthood
No.
or any of it. Yeah.
Oh. So tell me about your interactions with families to get them, performing at a high level and getting over. Self-esteem is something that since COVID, it was bad before. Jack
Mm-hmm.
Canfield said one time in the 2008 or something, he wrote a book. He said they did a test on self-esteem on 4 or 5 year olds, and their self-esteem was off the charts, right? They could
Mm-hmm.
fly, they could be whatever they wanted to be in life. And those same kids were studied at 18 years old, and they're almost suicidal, right?
Well,
So we do something through our system, and it could be partly parenting, it could be society, it could be a lot of things. And I think since COVID, self-esteem has really just kind of dropped off, and you see it with social media with the way kids do not interact like we did when we were kids
right,
because we
right.
had to interact. So how does that, how do you work with clients like that?
Yeah, it's really hard, and it's true. It's this comparison game that happens out there that can really have an impact on self-esteem. But in terms of optimizing resilience within the family system, we start with the parents, help them to manage or modulate their stress response because that's really important. If we're starting up here
Yeah.
and then a stressor or a challenge hits and we escalate, we're going to shut down most likely. And then we're not going to, be able to really function at all, let alone help guide our kids. So as parents, we really need to find a way to modulate our stress response so that we're starting each day in an even space. So I teach folks a really simple technique to start that process. It's called the relaxation response. It was developed by a physician in Boston back in the 70s. Really, really simple technique. You breathe as you're thinking about a word or a phrase that you find soothing in some way.
Yeah.
You want to do it on each side of the day. So 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes in the evening. Start to internalize what it feels like to be in that even space. And so that's really, really important for us as parents to do, and then to model that for our kids, even teach them that technique, because we want them to be starting in that even space as well, day in, day out. And then, we go on and we're building tools and strategies into our lives as parents that are going to optimize, make us as resilient as possible, sort of develop that resilient lifestyle. because resilience isn't a one-time thing where we're just like bouncing
Sure.
back from a challenge and then boom. It's really something we want to integrate fully into our lives and then model that for our kids. Exercise is really important, social connection, engaging in hobbies, things that are going to make us feel whole when we're on the brink of potential burnout, because burnout is real for
Yeah.
us as parents.
Do you find
And
that oh, go ahead, go ahead.
yeah, and then, the self-esteem thing is related, but kind of a different module, so to speak. We really want to be helping our kids to believe in themselves from the inside out. Just as we want as parents to be appreciating our own unique context,
Mhm.
being aware of our context, what is it that's going to make us flourish, and some of those strategies that I mentioned before, we want to help our kids do the same. You know, we want our kids to understand that as long as they're giving their best within their context, that's all we can ask. And that's really all they can ask of themselves. And success looks different for all of us. And so we want our
Yeah.
kids to believe in themselves from the inside out. And we want to help foster that as parents.
So when we were growing up, there was not so much thought put into it, right? Our parents
Mhm.
would snap a lot of times. We had zero um, ambition when it came to education, but a lot of ambition, work ambition, right? I
Mhm.
didn't have any professionals in my family. And so college was not even, it wasn't really even an option, which
Mhm.
is ludicrous when you think about it, but that's the way it was. You didn't need a degree to be a manager or a CEO a lot of times. You might,
Sure.
maybe in business or something, but really the educated people were doctors and, things what you do and
Mhm.
lawyers and things like that. And as we're shoving education down kids' throats now, um, it seemed to raise the anxiety of kids, right? Because
Mhm.
they have to do this in order to make parents happy. Do you get your clients? Is it typical that the kids are a certain age group, maybe 1 to 10 or 10 to 20 or something like that? Do you find that there's a commonality when they finally come to you and go, I'm about ready to blow my top kind of thing?
They're usually sort of late elementary,
Okay.
high school age. But it really varies. I mean, it does vary. It's really about the parent's sense of well-being.
Mhm.
That's kind of the initial reason that they come, if that makes sense.
Do you find that your clients are mostly educated,
Uh,
formally educated?
Generally, yes,
Okay.
yes, they are.
They
Mhm.
probably, I would think that would be because they understand what you had to do to get to where you're at. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, very
Versus
possible.
somebody that's not educated, say, I don't need a doctor, I don't need this, I don't need that. I just need to, go to a bar or whatever their resolve is, right? I find that my kids, I mean, I have 8 kids, so they were different motivation levels, right? They were ambitious in different ways. Some of them real high achievers, some of them just kind of they were cool right where they were at, right? Just wanted to be happy and run through flowers or whatever. And then some that used substances to get over their mind going so quick. So my dad was extremely intelligent. I would say probably a genius, but could not manage his thoughts. So
Mhm.
he managed them with alcohol, died at 46 years old
Mhm.
because he just never had any self-esteem.
Mhm.
And his parents weren't the type to encourage him necessarily. They split up, and this is talking about that. So they split up in probably the 50s, which is odd, right? Historically, we didn't have families breaking up like that and going through divorces or whatever. In fact, I don't even know if his parents were married, to be honest with you. I'm not here to
Mhm.
ask, but um, yeah. So, like I said, that self-esteem piece, and I think we've almost gone overboard on encouraging kids. Like we don't let them fail as much as they probably should.
Right. Yeah, you're bringing up so many good points, right? The first point about, all your kids are different, right? Some of them are
100%.
high achieving, some of them are, falling into things, some of them are happy running through the flowers, and that's really important for us as parents to acknowledge, right? That all of our kids are going to be different. Like my twin boys, very, very different. They're close friends, but incredibly different learning styles in school, incredibly different social styles, all of it. And so, what we try to do is embrace who each kid is and encourage them in that direction. But again, as long as they're giving their best within their context, that's all we can ask, right? If one of them who might not be as academically inclined
Mhm.
comes back with a subpar grade on a test, but he's given his best, that's what it is. We're not gonna uh, push beyond um, you know, beyond that, if he's done his ultimate best, that's what's the important thing. And for them to internalize that, very, very important.
So that's interesting. Since you were athletic, right? You played tennis, one
Mm-hmm.
of my favorite sport to play.
Hmm.
I'm incredibly competitive, like overly competitive.
Mm-hmm.
And I would push my kids a little harder when they played sports and things like that. We're going through this with my granddaughter right now. She just got they gave a weekly report for her. She's in sixth grade, and it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't great this weekend. And
Mm-hmm.
what we found out was she wasn't turning things in. And we
Mm-hmm.
did say to her, look, I don't care about the grades. The grades are the grades, right? We'll figure that out. If you're out struggling here in math or wherever you're struggling, we'll figure that. But if you're not even going to put the effort in, this is where the problem's going to come in.
Right.
So then we have to say, well, you have this thing, this golden thing you're doing. We're going to take it away if you can't get right. Because there's really no other way. I mean, I'm not going to, my dad would have just looked at me and I'd go, okay, that was enough. But it's interesting with twins. Obviously, I don't have any, but my sister has twins, and they are very different people. When I don't communicate with them very often, but they're up in Washington, by the way, with you.
Hmm.
And yeah, it is interesting how different kids are. I mean, just like night and day, and raised in the same household.
Yeah, raised in the same household, and so kids are born. I believe, and then of course there's the nurture aspect, but fundamentally, I think kids are who they're going to be when they're born, and we have to nurture that aspect so that they can develop that sense of themselves, that sense of who they are and their own potential from the inside out over time.
Yeah. Well, as you can imagine, we had a pretty crazy household, and we were very busy all the time. Right? We had five girls and four sports at one time,
Oof,
and the rushing.
intense.
And but we were good communicators. We communicated with the kids often and kind of find out what they were up to. Uh,
Yeah.
but it is difficult. And once they get that social, especially with social media, so social media really wasn't around when my kids they grew up and got past that. But now I don't know how parents deal with the social media with, and you were saying what social media is saying you should look like in life, and
Mm-hmm.
then and that's the one percenters, right? Those are the I don't have seven Ferraris in my driveway, but
Oh, but it's so hard, right? And how
yeah,
much of that stuff is curated and to help our kids see that, yeah, it might look this way, the perfect this, the perfect that, the perfect hair, makeup, clothes for the girls or whatever. But is that really real? And helping them to discern and helping them to maybe look at it, but look beyond it to their own reality and not fall into that comparison trap because that comparison trap is really toxic and
and it's
dangerous.
the worst it's ever been right now because
Yeah.
there was a guy on I saw a TikTok video the other day that says you understand that when that woman wakes up and her hair is all night, she set the camera up. And it wasn't like somebody walked in on her when she woke up, and she's a train wreck. She's got makeup on and everything. She rolls over and but this
Oh,
is, I mean, I think girls had a hard enough time. I think it's worse for girls than it is guys as
mhm.
far as their appearance. Guys don't care really most of the time,
Right,
We're
right.
usually sweating and doing whatever from playing sports. But I definitely saw where the girls, when they started wearing makeup and things like that, and my wife actually sold Mary Kay just so she could get discounts on makeup and learn how to teach the girls to wear it, right?
Yeah.
But we weren't in that. We had models and things like that, but there was not this social media thing that's going on. And I think this is really killing kids' self-esteem because they can't live up to those expectations.
Exactly. It's those expectations. And so, really helping our kids to understand that reality. And social media, I mean, the whole phone culture is really, really difficult, right? And helping kids over time to modulate their use from the inside out, but it happens developmentally. So there definitely has to be some external sort of boundaries put in place, particularly when the kids are younger, if they have phones when they're younger. But it's such a hard balance to strike because ultimately we do need our kids within this phone culture to be able to modulate their use from the inside out because they're going to get to a point where we're not able to have any control over it.
Right.
Um, but at the same point, what's that balance? Because, when kids are spending hours and hours and hours on their phones each day, the impact of that is real and it's not good.
Here's the worst part. I go to the gym at 5 a.m. I was there at 5 a.m. this morning, and
Mm-hmm.
there's probably 25 people in there, right?
Mm-hmm.
These are all adults. There's no kids in there because it's school time, right? So they don't go in at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
But all these adults are on their phone too, by the way.
Yeah, I know.
And it
It's
drives me crazy because
rough.
I've had people ask me, well, what should I do for this lift? I said, well, the first thing is put your phone away.
Yeah,
Go put it in your backpack because you're not getting the workout that you want if you have that phone out.
spot on.
But parents are doing it too. If you've got the kid these days, if they're 10 years old, they're probably 30, 35 years old. They're on their phone all the time too. And they're telling the kids, you can't be on the phone. And then they're sitting there texting their husband on the other end of the couch.
Precisely. It's brutal, right? And I do talk about that in my book, Step Away, the importance of us as parents modulating our own use, right? And showing, kind of demonstrating, modeling that type of behavior for our kids. But, yeah, we're modeling in the opposite direction if we're always on our phones and we're also not able to put them down. And then that becomes a little bit hypocritical if we're on our phone and we're like, no, you've got to put your phone down, to our child. So it's a delicate balance, but absolutely something that we as parents need to be working on as well.
But the schools, they give the kids a laptop it's not called a laptop. It's like an iPad.
Mm-hmm.
And they're doing their homework through all that too. So
Right.
we're reinforcing that it's okay to be on your right.
Yeah, on your device, and it's creating those boundaries and what's being accomplished on. But I think the school iPads, the school computers are kind of one piece of it. I don't think that they're going to go too far in the direction of overuse as long as the phone can be put away off to the side for periods of time. And schools are starting to do that. Schools are starting to uh, take phones at the beginning of the day such that the kids can't have them, which has its own set of liabilities. But I think ultimately, from a focus productivity perspective, is a good thing.
And my daughter and my granddaughter went to an event Friday night. It was called Neon something. I don't know. I'm old. I don't know what she was doing, but they had music and games and things like that. And they took all their phones when they got there, which
Yeah,
I was happy that they didn't have their phones. But if something would have happened, I wish she would have had her phone. So
right.
I hope they could find a you can keep them, but you can't use them kind of thing. If we catch you using them, then I don't know. I mean, I'm on social media all day. I'm
Yeah.
promoting my podcast. I'm promoting this, promoting that. I'm talking to people. So I'm not one. No, I'm bad one to talk to because I am on social media all day, doing different things. I using AI a lot, so I'm using Chat GPT or Copilot or all those things. So I'm constantly doing that, trying to learn about different things. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
using it as more of a tool to help me, but I'm also watching stupid videos once in a while. So I mean, I can't really criticize the kids, but we do monitor it pretty good with her. And then I have an 18-year-old that I don't know. He doesn't seem to be that interested in the phone, but he uses it to communicate. But that's all he used to do.
And that's a good thing. That's a really good thing, right? Because 18, they can get sucked into the video thing and they can just be constantly watching the video. I see it a bit here with my guys, and it's concerning, but I'm still working on the line there because they're 18. They need to be able to modulate from the inside out because they go off to college, I'm not going to be there. They just, it's a really fine line.
So
We're
you just
still
brought
working on
something
it.
up that's a good topic. We can go down this road. I have to sometimes remind my wife that our grandson is 18, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
he's an adult, and he can all of a sudden legally he can do some things that, like this morning when I left, he was coming in. I was leaving at 4 o'clock in the morning. Well, he was outside just talking to his buddy. Now, I would never have done that when I was a kid, although I worked nights. So I was, when I was his age, I was working nights.
Hmm.
But, they're their own people and they're interested in different things, than we were. And we didn't have all these resources when we were kids. We played sports. I mean, really, I played sports, maybe listened to music, and I worked a lot.
Hmm.
That was our thing. Now they have so many things they can be doing. And I have a person that's coming on about education next week, and he's developed apps to enhance kids' education at home when they get home. The only question I have for him is he I like to give my granddaughter a break when she comes home. She's already been in school all day. Give her a break for an hour or so, then start her homework. I don't, this is in addition to their schoolwork, and I think, man, I think you're just piling on. The parents should be doing it with the kids, not, in my opinion.
Sure, sure. Yeah, that's really interesting. And so it depends on kind of the role of the app or what they're trying to accomplish or what have you. But I fully agree with you about the break. And I mean, not rolling in from school and then rolling into another, you have to do this.
Right.
That I think will take away from a kid's ability to kind of self manage in general, and then will take away from their um, really interest, focus, motivation to do the schoolwork piece if they're feeling pushed too hard to do the other piece. But I suspect that it's different for everybody. Um,
100%.
but that's a really interesting one. I can't wait to listen to that episode. That'll be cool.
Yeah, and also I think that we kind of the five girls were kind of going to school at the same time in the same school, so they would come home and do their homework right away, but they did it as a group. And it
Hmm.
was kind of a time to eat together and say, hey, what's up with you? Because they're not in all the same classes, obviously. So it worked out slick for us. But my granddaughter doesn't have that option. She has nobody here except us to. So we don't. I just don't think I need to be harping on kids all the time. You know what I mean? They have to have some discipline, though. Kind of goes back to that. Hey, if you're not going to try, then you're not going to have fun,
Right.
basically. But I listen. I find that when I was working and I was a manager, I had a lot of problems with kids, younger people that just had zero discipline.
Mm-hmm.
And this being rewarded for everything.
Hmm.
So back to my parents used to say maybe I would say it about my brother. Why does he get to do that and I didn't? Because she would say because he's different than you.
Mm.
That's exactly why. Because he's not the same person. And there's going to be times when you get something that he doesn't get. And
Yeah.
she kind of drove it into our heads that's just one of those things that everybody's different,
Hmm.
you know.
Yeah. Super important point, right? And probably a lesson that you internalized then early, and then you weren't as worried about those differences moving on. Was that right?
I was such a driver when I was a kid. I remember I was driving home one day with my dad from a basketball game, and I didn't get to play much. And I was
Mm-hmm.
crying. I was like 14 years old, and he's like, "What are you crying for?" My dad was pretty hard ass, right? And I said, "I wanted to play, and this guy, I'm better than him, but he's playing ahead of me." He says, "Well, then you need to practice more
Mm-hmm.
because I'm telling you, that if you're that much better than him, I don't care who his dad is, you're going to play."
Yeah.
So I did that, and I was disciplined. I mean, I carried a basketball with me. I played in the morning. I played at night. I had two classes at school. I did whatever I could to get, and I did improve that much where I was better than that kid. And then at work, I always wanted to move up. My daughter's like this. My oldest daughter is really driven. So is
Mhm.
my son. But
Yeah.
some of the other kids are at a good level in life. They're adults and they have kids, and
Hmm.
they're fine where they're at. Like
Yeah.
my wife is downstairs. She's like a robot from 8 to 4:30 every day, same lunchtime, same break time. She does invoicing, which I could not do. She sits in the same chair. I got to be up running around. I got to be doing something, talking to people, doing things like this.
Hmm.
So it's
Hmm.
just that. But you have to identify that when the kids are growing up because everyone's not going to be driven. you know?
Right. Everybody's wired differently, right?
Yeah,
And to help, so as parents, we need to build awareness, self-awareness, to understand what our strengths are, our challenges, where we're driven, what direction, et cetera, et cetera. Important to help our kids to do the same, there can be flexibility in it. It can, shift and ebb and flow because, of course, our kids are developing understanding, what are their passions, what are their interests, what are their strengths,
right.
how can they use those strengths to compensate for things that are hard for them, all of it. But it's that self-awareness piece that's huge, and as parents we can really help our kids with that.
Yeah, and my grandson was not, he was a good athlete, but he was not athletic. He didn't like sports.
Hmm.
Drove me
Hmm.
crazy because that's all I did. I still do it. I rode my bike to the gym at 4 o'clock this morning and then worked out and then rode my bike home. And he's just not, that's just not his gig.
Not him.
And the term open-minded always kind of leans to, oh, well, you'll let your kids do anything. No, that's not what I meant. Open-minded was I'm open to ideas that they have. I just want them to continue to improve, right?
Yeah.
Whatever it is. Tony Robbins used to call it continuous and never ending improvement, right?
Hmm.
Just be willing to learn things. This is where I think a lot of parents these days, they have this vision. And some of my daughters, I was worried about this. They had this vision of what their kids' childhood should look like. And it's
Hmm.
not anything that they thought, just like me.
Yeah.
So, but they're adjusting. They're making adjustments and they're staying focused and they're all good parents. They all pay attention to a lot to their kids.
Sure.
So it's just sometimes, it's that kind of food thing where if they don't like something, that's just because they don't like it. You know.
Yeah, yeah, and that's okay, right? And it's okay to be who you are, both as parents and kids. And for us as parents to really respect that, of course, we're going to help them develop, we're going to help them grow. And that process of getting better can happen within whatever the kid's context is. Maybe they're an athlete, maybe they're not, maybe they're super academic or not, or maybe it's art or theater. Who knows what it is? There's so much that can define our kids. And to be open to understanding that, figuring that out with them is important.
And this is what drives me a little bit about our education system is they've taken physical education almost out completely. I mean, it's
Mm.
it's nothing like when we went to school.
Right.
We had PE every day, or when we had block schedules, we had long, like an hour with the PE, a couple times a week.
Hmm.
And the music thing, I think kids that are musical or artistic are better students a lot of times because I think all of our mind is, and we don't do enough of the arts for kids because it costs money and they don't want to do that, right?
Hmm.
And they have this, uh, well, California at least, and I'm sure it's nationwide, have this. We've been educating kids the same way for 50 years. You think something's changed since then?
Hmm.
Like we
Yeah.
don't wear orange and brown polyester and dial a phone anymore, right? I can talk to a guy in China in my car on my way somewhere live. So I think we need to make some adjustments, and I think they're trying. But this guy that's going to be on next week is with me on that. That he thinks there needs to be a lot of change, and he works with charter schools too,
Mm-hmm.
which my wife works for a charter school, so I understand the process of that.
Yeah.
I could never homeschool my kids. I'd probably kill them if I did that.
That would be intense. I honestly, yes, I could not do that either. My husband and I have talked about the fact that, oof, it's good we don't do that because it would be a lot. But some people are, some parents are wired for
So
that.
good at it. My
Yeah.
daughter-in-law has 6 children, and she's homeschooling them, and
It's
she's
amazing.
a teacher by trade, so
Yeah.
she gets it, and she's doing a fantastic job.
That is awesome. That's really cool.
Well, Kate, I know we could spend 2 hours doing this, just talking about stuff, and I love the fact that you back up some of the stuff I believe, and you have statistical information of where I have the hands on. You have the hands on too, but
Hmm.
with 8 kids, man, so we had a span of 10 years between those kids because two of my kids are stepkids.
Hmm.
And I'm telling you, from that youngest one to the oldest one, a lot changed from 1986 to 1996
Oh yeah,
that made us,
definitely.
treat the kids different. And like you said, with all these different personalities, we kind of had to figure things out. And I don't get involved in my kids' business.
Hmm.
When my mom was good about when I turned 18, pretty much she said, you're I was a pretty good kid too at 18. I wasn't paying, I was working and had a car and all that. But I don't, but when my kids do bring it, because they have life problems, sometimes they got to come up to me and ask things. And I have better answers than I had for myself at the time now, right? Because we're much more calm.
Yes.
I think the best thing a lot of times is just to not make a rash decision, just kind of, and that's hard for kids, right? They want to answer right now.
Exactly. Yeah.
My
And it's that,
stepdad used to, my stepdad
that
used to tell me before you make a major purchase, wait 7 days. And I kind of do that with decisions too.
I think that's a great plan because it's that creating space to respond as opposed to react,
Yeah.
in terms of all of it. So that's a great point.
All right. Well, I will have your website in I'm going to send you everything that I do, all my recordings and everything like that. Let me do an outro real quick and then we'll chat for a minute and you can get on your way.
Sounds great.
So this is the Ed Franklin No Limits podcast. Dr. Kate Lund, awesome, smart, wealth of knowledge, and all these things she does. Like I said, I'm tired just reading off what she's done in her life. You can always contact me at edfranklin.nolimits@gmail.com or through my social media platforms. I'm everywhere. So if you need to get a hold of me, please do. Please share this podcast. And also, when you're on my YouTube channel, please subscribe. So, everybody have a great day, and we will talk to all of you soon.